Hi readers, me here, and it is time for my March reading wrap-up. I do plan, initially I thought I'd squeeze another book novella in for this month, but then I decided I didn't want that kind of pressure. This year, reading is about having a good time, enjoying myself, not trying to reach some goal. That said, I did read 16 books in March, and I'm going to tell you about them. March for me was a great reading month. January and February felt kind of like down, even though I did read some great books. I've got 3 of them up there on the shelf behind me. But it just, I don't know, maybe it was the weather. But March has been great, even though there were some books in here that there's one particular book that was just ruined for me, and you know what it is if you saw my book review. But I started off the month with Bye Baby by Carola Lovering. And I adored this book. It was about a bad friendship and a girl who was obsessed inexplicably with her former BFF, who was always self-centered. And there were some things in here that were predictable, but I loved it. I loved all the characters, even the ones that were bad. It just was a fun, fast read, and this is definitely one I hope I forget about in a couple years and come back to it again, because it was a great time. I've got nowhere to put these books, so I'll just plop them on the floor. Next up, I read a Christmas book, The Christmas Fix by Lucy Score. Again, I had a great time with this one. This was about a reality TV show and enemies to lovers story. Really, just a really good time. If you want a Christmas book, if you like a light romance, this was it for me. Next up, Not So Light. I know I've read this book before, but I don't have a copy of it. At least in my app, I couldn't find where I had a copy. It is called Come Sundown by Nora Roberts. This was published in 2017, so I have read it. I mean, I could have read it downrange or something. In this book, this is about a woman who is kidnapped and missing for, nearly 20 years, maybe not that long, I don't remember. And then it's also about family. Nora Roberts' books are always about family. There's some danger at the end. They are a little bit formulaic, but it's a great comfort read. I loved it. And that's all I've got to say. I don't know if I did a review on that one or not. Next up, I read White Smoke by Tiffany D. Jackson, who also wrote one of my favorite novels that I read last year or the year before, Monday's Not Coming. I loved Monday's Not Coming. I liked White Smoke. It was good. But, you know, some novels are just incomparable. So, so this was a good, solid story by Tiffany D. Jackson. But if I had to recommend one, it would be Monday's Not Coming. I can't say that enough. Next up, new for me, an author named Danielle Jensen. She's not a new author, but she's new to me. This is A Fate Inked in Blood. This was on the March Book of the Month's options. I did not get it from there. I got it from Barnes & Noble. It's got little pretty sides. I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed why are my bookmarks still in here? I enjoyed the whole Norse mythology. I loved learning about the Shield Maiden. I loved about how the gods, you know, how the gods like gift a drop of blood to some children and it gives them a gift. Anywho, this is book 1, and as soon as I find out book 2 is coming out, I am pre-ordering that. Definitely a good light fantasy though. We now come to the book that enraged me. Let me start by saying I love this author. I have loved everything previously that she wrote, but This book is set in 1995, and the husband in this book is a veteran of Iraq. And apparently, according to this book, he deployed for 14 months in like 1993 or 1994. Except, no one in the U.S. was deployed to Iraq at that time. The Gulf War ended in 1991, early 1991, like February, and we didn't leave troops in Iraq after that. So I don't know, I know what fucking war she was talking about. She was talking about the U.S. invasion of Iraq, which started in 2003, not 1995. Aside from that, I love the story. I feel like her lack of fact-checking just ruined the book for me, and that is Murder Road by Simone St. James. If you'd like to know all my opinions about that, and even how she could have redeemed this book, you can check out my channel. I did a book response to this, and I was livid. That's all I've got to say. She is no longer going to be an auto-buy for me because of that fact. It's extremely disappointing. It's lazy writing, and I expected better. After that, I was unsure. I thought I was going to go into a spiral where I did not want to read again. So, and I really, when I was looking at my book of the month options, I was like, I don't want to read that, I don't want to read that, I don't want to read that, but I chose Listen for the Lie. And this made up a little bit for Murder Road. This is about a girl who thinks that she might have killed her best friend, but she does not have any memory of that night. Everybody in town thinks she killed her best friend, and there's a podcaster now who wants to interview her. I loved the characters in this. This was a laugh out loud, funny kind of book. I would spoil you if I read you anything from the first, aside from the first sentence. A podcaster has decided to ruin my life, so I'm buying a chicken. And that humor is peppered throughout here. This girl was realistic. Lucy was realistic. The ending was a little bit rushed, maybe? I don't know. Doesn't matter. I loved it. This was a great book. It helped me recover from my anger over Murder Road, and I recommend it. Next up, I read True Colors by Kristin Hannah. This... It's one thing when a book makes you mad. It's another thing when a character in a book makes you mad. When a character in a book makes me mad, that's how I know it's great writing. Years ago, when Game of Thrones was really big, everybody hated Joffrey. And I heard on the internet that fans would lash out at him personally for the things that his character did. And that's just absurd. Well, you know the actor is being paid to play a role, and there was a character in here that who I really disliked, but the fact that the author could make me feel that is great writing. I recommend True Colors. It's a really kind of just a long, bittersweet story about sisters, and sometimes the things that sisters do to each other are worse than something that you do to a stranger. So, if you like Kristin Hannah, if you want, a good family novel, a good novel about a family, I recommend it. Next up, another great read, First Lie Wins by Ashley Elston. This is Reese's Get Book Club novel. Reese usually doesn't disappoint. I think one book maybe was a disappointment or a DNF. But this one was not a disappointment. This is about a woman she does cons, and she does it for a boss who she never sees, and finally things start to catch up with her, or do they? I recommend it. Good, twisty, kind of mystery, fun. Even though I thought it wouldn't I thought it wouldn't work for me because it's about a con and I'm not really into that. It worked. Next up, Lessons in Chemistry, which was last year's Barnes & Noble Book of the Year by Barney Garmus. There's also a television show on Apple TV. I've been watching that little by little. I can appreciate the television series after watching this. This was really good. I think I did a whole review on this one as well. And I did do a whole review on it. I really enjoyed it. Is it my favorite book of the month even? No, but I did enjoy it. And I do recommend it. Next up, a little bit of a disappointment. Girl 11, I was looking for a book about a serial killer, and this I thought was going to be a total hit for me because it's based around a podcast. I love that. Podcast reality shows. I love all that. But there was almost too much podcast in this where I felt like she was using the podcast to tell me and not show me. So you'll hear me complain about tell, not show all the time. But decent. I finished it in a day. Next up, probably not going to be a keeper. A good zany book though, and that was Terry and the Pirates by Julian F. Thompson. I read The Grounding of Group 6 by him, which is about a group of kids who are sent to some like wilderness camp by their parents. Only their parents are sending them there to have them killed. So this is completely different from that. This is about Terry who hides away on a yacht thinking it's going to be some rich man that's the pilot. Turns out it's not. And it is just the zaniest story. I said I'm probably not going to keep this because I would like it to pass it on. This is really more for a younger reader, even though I enjoy young books for young readers. Why keep this if I'm not going to reread it, and why not share it with the world? This next book, I expected a lot more from it, and that is Weyward by Emilia Hart. It was fine. It was told in 3 timelines, and it was just fine. It wasn't great. It wasn't... I don't know. I think it took too long to get where it was going. But I don't regret reading it. I'm trying to focus more on enjoyment and not being critical, aside from people who blatantly fuck up facts in books. But this was just fine. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you like it's not even a witchy, it's not a mystery. I'm not sure what it was. Anyway, decent. Okay. This next 2 books are, both of them in their own way, are unlike anything I've ever read. Knock Knock, Open Wide by Neil Sharpson. So, it's funny. I can read books that have been translated from different languages, or books about Afghans or Pakistanis or Indians or a lot of people from a lot of different countries. However, when I read this is by an Irish author set in Ireland, it felt like I was reading something and it was hard for me to translate at first. I don't mean that in a bad way. It just took me a while to get into the culture. Which is funny, I've been to Ireland twice. I'm not from there, but our people allegedly were a million years ago. This is a book, and he does say, he's like, if you want to know about Irish folklore, don't look here. Because he incorporates Puck and the Morgan and changelings, and it took me a long time to figure out how things kind of tied together. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was not an easy read. It took me several days to read this. But now that cover makes sense. I recommend. I do recommend. It is great. The next one, which was also a treat, is You'd Look Better as a Ghost. Claire is a serial killer. Now look, this is I think she is British, yeah, British born in the UK author, and I read books about the UK, specifically London, all the time, so I'm familiar with that culture. Claire's a serial killer, and she is a hoot. Again, this book was nothing like anything I'd ever read before, particularly about a serial killer. There's humor in here. There is grief, and there's a back and forth between time periods, and I just found this so refreshing and interesting. Again, it took me a little bit longer to read this one because it was different from any other book I've read about a serial killer. This, I think, might be kind of Dexter-like, but anyway, highly recommend. Finally, I finished up the month reading Blood Sisters by Vanessa Lillie, and in this, again, I enjoyed this book. I got better towards the end, but at the beginning, she's trying to tell you so much history, and she's telling it more than showing it. That said, I did learn a lot about Pitcher, I'm not sure, Oklahoma, and then it inspired me to go do a Google search to learn more about the town and how the mining had killed it. Decent read. Will I read another in the series? Probably not. I did feel like she didn't do as much character development on the main character's wife, and I would have liked to have seen that, because there's a whole thing in there that I didn't see coming, and I don't know. Anywho, good read, but will I read more in the series? Probably not. I've got a shit ton else to read. Anywho, that's my month in reading. I'm hoping April is as good as March was. March was a great month, despite the one bad book. Anywho, that's all for me. Hope you've had a great reading month. Happy reading.